In 2005, a marine biologist named Ingrid Visser was swimming alone off the coast of New Zealand when an orca surfaced 3 feet in front of her. Then another. Then 4 more. She was surrounded, completely isolated, in open water, with 6 animals that each outweighed her by 8,000 pounds. They looked at her. She looked at them. Then they swam away. No human has ever been killed by a wild orca. Not once. Not in all of recorded history. That sentence should not make sense. Orcas are not misunderstood gentle giants. They are the most effective apex predators on Earth. They hunt great white sharks and eat only the liver, leaving the rest. They work in coordinated teams to create waves that knock seals off ice floes with military precision. They have been documented teaching their calves how to beach themselves temporarily just to grab prey. No other predator on this planet combines that level of intelligence, coordination, and raw physical power. And they have never killed a human being in the wild. In this video, we're going to look at what orca behavior actually tells us, what the science says about how they perceive humans, and what those near-miss encounters reveal that most people don't realize. Let's start with what orcas actually are, because most people's mental image is wrong. When people hear killer whale, they picture something like a bigger, meaner shark. That's not what an orca is at all. Orcas are dolphins, the largest species in the dolphin family. They have brains that, by neuron count and connectivity, are in some ways more complex than human brains. They live in family groups called pods, led by a matriarch who can live past 90 years old. Every pod has its own dialect, a specific set of calls and sounds that no other pod uses, passed down through generations. Young orcas spend years learning hunting techniques from their mothers before they're allowed to participate in actual hunts. This is not instinct. This is culture. Now here's where Nadia comes in. Nadia is a marine wildlife guide who has run whale-watching tours off Vancouver Island for 9 years. She has been within 50 meters of orcas on hundreds of occasions. And she says the question she gets most from tourists is not, "Are you scared?" It's, "Why don't they ever go for the people in the water?" Her answer, backed by researchers, comes down to 2 things. First, orcas hunt by category, and humans are not in any of their categories. Different orca populations eat completely different things and show almost no flexibility. Big's orcas in the Pacific Northwest eat marine mammals, seals, sea lions, even minke whales. Resident orcas in the same water eat only fish, almost exclusively Chinook salmon. Put a Big's orca next to a fish, and it shows almost no interest. Put a resident orca next to a seal, and the same thing happens. These categories are learned, culturally fixed, and extraordinarily rigid. Humans are not marine mammals in the biological sense that orcas hunt. We don't smell like their prey, we don't move like their prey, and we have no profile in their hunting culture. To an orca, a human in the water appears to be something they genuinely have no framework for. Second, orcas appear to make deliberate decisions not to escalate around humans, even when they easily could. This is the part that researchers find hardest to explain with pure instinct. There are dozens of documented cases where orcas have approached human swimmers, divers, and kayakers, and in several cases, physically moved them out of the way or guided them in a direction before leaving. In 1997, a group of orcas off Patagonia was observed playing with a swimmer for nearly 20 minutes, repeatedly circling, surfacing close, and then voluntarily disengaging. No aggression. No test bite. Nothing. Compare that to great white sharks, which will investigate an unfamiliar object with their mouth because they have no other way to examine it. Orcas have hands, metaphorically speaking. They can investigate without biting. The captivity data complicates this picture in an important way. There have been 4 human deaths associated with captive orcas, all involving the same whale Tilikum at SeaWorld. Researchers who study wild orca behavior treat this data as almost completely separate. A captive orca is not exhibiting wild orca cognition. It is an animal in a state of severe chronic stress, isolated from its pod, unable to perform the behaviors that define its existence. The fact that wild orcas, who have every physical capability to harm humans, choose not to, while captive orcas under extreme psychological pressure occasionally do, actually reinforces the argument that wild orca restraint is a behavioral choice, not a physical limitation. Nadia once watched a pod of Big's orcas take down a gray whale calf 200 meters from her boat. It was coordinated, fast, and absolute. She said it was the most efficient display of predatory power she had ever seen. An hour later, a snorkeler jumped into the water 80 meters from where the pod was still feeding. The orcas looked in his direction once, then went back to their meal. That snorkeler had no idea how close he was. Nadia did. And she said she was never worried. The question researchers are still genuinely trying to answer is whether this is simply cultural, orcas never learned to eat humans so they don't, or whether there's something more active happening, a recognition of humans as a different kind of intelligence that operates somewhere outside the prey-predator framework. The honest scientific answer right now is, we don't fully know. But after decades of study, thousands of hours of observation, and 0 wild kills, the behavior is consistent enough that most researchers have stopped calling it an accident. Ingrid Visser still swims with wild orcas. She says the 6 that surrounded her in 2005 were the calmest she has ever felt in the water.